This conference
Anyway,
will now be recorded.
um, we want to do this in short chunks because we know you guys are busy. And I've found over the years, like we used to do, 4 or 5 days of training in a row, and people just like your brain explodes after a certain period of time. So we don't want anybody's brain to explode. We want you to be able to take what we go over, get right in after the thing is done, practice some stuff, write down a question or two, and then we'll have another session maybe in a week. And we'll just keep doing these sessions until you guys are satisfied that, you're able to do whatever it is you want to do. I know being able to make maps for the field is a big one. So we'll show you how to do that. And it might not even be bad, Chris, since they're pretty familiar with these weather stations, to maybe go over some of the supporting layers, the orthos. We should also cover how to set up their orthos and their contours, because they a lot of times are trying to find an elevation at a specific spot. And one thing about us here at SPI and Anderson, everybody should have a Z drive. If you don't have a Z drive, we'll have to look into why you might not. But on the Z drive, there is a contours folder, there's an orthos folder, and in those contours and orthos folders, there are a lot of different options. In orthos, we have orthos that go all the way back, I think, to 2009. And then we have up to date 2020 orthos. In some areas of the fire, we actually flew some orthos. I mean, satellite imagery, I guess, but they're 20-inch resolution in the fire areas. And we have LiDAR data, shaded relief data. This is kind of similar to Google Earth, but the nice thing about this is when we're done today, you'll know how to make your own Avenza map to email yourself and put on your phone or your tablet or whatever it is that you're using to navigate in the field.
Hey, Glenn, that's really what we need.
Yeah.
We're mostly interested in creating Avenza maps to go, deploy weather stations and to look around areas. So I think these pictures will be good. And then we want to be able to export those layers to a CAMZ or CAML file so we can see it on Google Earth. So, I think this is good. We're, because we move our weather stations around every year. So I don't know if we just want to update that one SPI weather station layer and add a year in it. We could do something like that because we try to keep all that data for lawsuits too. So that'll have to be.
I think updating it and sticking a year on it's a great idea, Cajun.
Yeah.
Okay.
You could do that. I don't know if we're all going to remember this, but technically what you could do, say January comes around, you're going to start moving your weather stations. What is this? Does this have a year on it already? 2000?
No, it probably doesn't, but.
Oh, that's not a year. Okay. So say you wanted to do that. It's pretty straightforward. So you have SPI port weather stations. So you can select layer all. So I just did Alt select layer all, or you can actually just come here, select all. And then I'm going to do just watch here. So edit, geographic, copy, new layer. So I'm copying everything that's selected. Now you can call this weather 2022 or something.
Yeah.
And so now you've got a copy of the exact ones. You could just turn this off. It's effectively an archive. You could pretend all of these are archives, and you can right click here, make a group from the selection. You can call this 2020. So there's your 2020 data. Maybe this is your newer data. You can make a group from this and call this 2021 or something like that. You could easily do that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So if we could just go through like importing the layers, and then we'll be working off it. And then Glenn, I think what we really have to think about is, once we get something set for the year, everybody would use the same, information on their Avenza tablets. And then, so we would want to distribute that to everybody. So I think ours will be more standard issue.
Right. It's important that we cover some of the basics, like how to turn the labels on and how to change the symbol colors. But I think what you're not doing THPs. But you
Right.
do need to show things a little bit differently so that when you look at your map, you know what you're looking at. You could even turn labels onto the points if you wanted for the portables or something. I mean, the permanents, you're going to probably know just where they are, what they are. But we definitely want to show you how to do an Avenza map. Go over well, I wouldn't say go over, but yeah, you're going to turn the label on for the station. So that sort of puts it right on the point, but you can offset those if you go into position.
You can even go more if you
move it
want.
off of the point. You can kind of move it around, fine tune it, adjust it.
They should have technically gone through this, by the way, Glenn,
Okay,
in the
okay.
training. So they probably do have a background in this already.
Okay.
Let's
I
go
don't
through
want to
the
go over
kind of.
stuff that they've already gone over, but sometimes.
No, I mean, with the programmers, we've spent so much time building this form because it is important to see the data, especially when you have a really complex geo. It's like every single road, you need to set thematics on them, but we can kind of go over that a little bit later. For now, I'll just take you through the kind of bang for your buck orthos. I don't know if they're set up with orthos, but obviously this is the 2020 imagery. I don't have all of the imagery going back, but recently, I'm not sure how much analysis you guys would do, but recently we've compiled newest LiDAR data and we made hill shades and slopes out of them. So I can just show what those look like. They could be useful. So these are 1 meter resolution slopes, which could potentially help you, and they go along from the same data set. We also built contours, so you have 1 meter contour data set, which I know you guys look from the
You
top
can
of
see a
hills
lot
quite
of
a bit.
detail in here. When you get drilled down, a lot of times, depending upon the resolution of the LiDAR, but like in Camino, you can see water
You can see
bars.
water breaks, yeah. Go ahead, Glenn.
I was just going to say, zoom in on that and show them the water bars on the skid trails. It's pretty amazing.
And then the slope data, this is incremental. So anything white is below 30 degrees. Anything yellow is between 30 and 50, and then over 50 is red. And then we have this incremental, which is just
10% increments.
Yeah, 10% increments, but it does a lot for painting a picture of what might be out there, or if you think it's a flat hill, but it ends up having a severe cliff or something, these kinds of things could be useful. Water drainages, especially, I know you guys do a lot down there. So very accurate data set there. And also very useful, if you can remember, add web map layer. So that's in the layer tree right here. So if you click on this, add web map layer, we have quite a few different plugins, essentially, is what you could think of them as. So we've got some stuff from Esri in here, shaded relief. It's not all too useful, but these USGS topos are pretty useful. So I could put one of those on. Not sure how much you guys use them, but kind of good for historical data. Open that back up. Got OpenStreetMap, Google Satellite can be useful. It's like Glenn said, it's kind of based off the NAPE imagery, but they do get certain updates that the NAPE doesn't. So it's kind of nice to be able to use that. You can see from the 2020 if something else happened in here. That's kind of interesting. So web map layer, super useful. Let's see here, OpenStreetMap, Google Satellite. You have Google Hybrid can also be pretty useful if you need to know street names or place names without going to Google.
Hey, Chris, Casey just asked a question. Is there a way to search a Latin long to get a location on the map?
Sure. That was on the list to get to.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Go
No,
ahead.
you're good. That's great. So that would be under the view dropdown. So view map zoom XY. and this is based on what you have in configure program. So I have it set up on configure program. Units. Right now we only have a few different options. You can use slat long NAD 27, NAD 84, or you can use UTM. So I'm just using NAD 27 at the moment. So that's what you would be zooming to if you used view map zoom XY. And what's also really useful about it is if you zoomed in right here, real close, when you open that menu, it's showing you the center of the screen. So if you wanted to quickly just grab where you are, this would be a good way to do it. You can come in here and copy and paste that somewhere else if you needed to. Obviously,
The
it's
other
kind of
thing
heads up.
is if you click on the point, it will show you its lat long as well.
Sure. So we have two different ways of looking at attribute data, depending on what you're trying to do. A lot of times people can get away with just using this feature info window.
Can you make
So
your
if you
button
click on
bigger,
it,
Chris, so when you click on them, we can see what they are?
oh yeah. So this is feature info. This is one of those dockable windows. You can put this off your screen if you want. Typically this kind of works well over here. They're all adjustable. So this can be nice. If you don't have your labels on, you can click on this to get all of the attribute information. And this data came in with its own Latin long, but all of these fields up here in gray are generated by Atlas on the fly. So this is Atlas's Latin long. This is what came in with the shapefile itself. And also, I forgot to mention, we can come back to adding, and you can add points using Latin long too, but I just want to point this out because it could be useful. We always have created and edited dates. So this one was created today because that's when it was added to this project. But if you maintain your geo and you have these layers like we were talking about going forward through time, if you maintain these well, you would be able to see when you added it or when you edited it. So if I go edit geographic vertex move, you can move this point, hit enter to save. So now I have an edited date and a created date. Of course, they're both today, but that can be very useful.
And Chris is in Arkansas, so his time's a little different than ours.
It's true. Yeah, Cajun and I live in Arkansas now. Believe that. I'll be moving back though as soon as I can. I don't recommend it to anyone. Okay, view map, zoom XY. So if you're on a layer, let's see here, edit geographic add, say we're adding a new point. I assume that you're gonna probably be using a GPS to bring in these points, but if you knew the location, you can do edit geographic add on this active layer, click OK. And I'm gonna right click now. So before I actually click on the map, I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna say add to XY. So it gives you an option to change this. If you are using GPS coordinates, you could change it to WGS 84, or if you can just use this. And then you can modify these as needed. Once you hit enter, it would then move that point to that position on the map.
Hey, I have a question. We take most of our stuff off either Google Earth or mostly our GPSs.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a standardized way, Glenn, that everybody in the company is doing it? Like, because the projections are different, so slightly different.
Yeah, so I believe most of our GPSs, I mean, you guys could be running different and the people using the GPS would know how to set it, but in general, most people run their GPSs in NAD 27, but there's nothing that says you can't run it in WGS 84. WGS 84 is what Google Earth uses. So, you know, it's entirely up to you. The thing is, most of the layers that we use are NAD 27. So what this does enable you to do is, say you had set a point or you had looked at something in Google Earth written the coordinates down, if you wanted to add the location from Google Earth to this geo that has NAD27 as the datum, when you went to add it, you could just switch to projection. When you were right click, there was the option to change it to WGS84, and that would let you add it, and it would tell the program, hey, I'm adding this point in WGS84, and you would put it in and it would go to that spot, and then it would actually be though added to the layer that was NAD27. It's kind of maybe a little bit.
It'll convert it on its own. I think that's really important because we've had some minor confusion in the field for water quality points and stuff, you know, and it's just a projection issue. So that'll be great.
Projections are always complicated, but it is kind of fundamental to Atlas that every new geo that you make is defaulted to NAD27 UTM zone 10 north. So you can see that right here under the mechanic wheel is accurate. So we keep with it. You could technically change it, but it's kind of nice to keep with standard because then you know, I don't know, it's something that we've always maintained.
No, I think that's good.
And you know, they're going to be adding points in lots of different ways. And they're going to be wanting the coordinates, kind of some of the things that we went over. But you know, a lot of times Cajun at the beginning of the season is going to get a list of timber sales that are going to come up, and they're going to want a weather station, a portable out there. And so she's going to work with the forester or the district manager on that district and say, oh, you know, what's a good place that is going to be unbiased but representative of this place where this timber sale is going to be. And they're going to settle on a location. Once they do that, they're going to want to map it. And then once it's mapped, they're going to want to make, you know, an Avenza map to go deploy it.
Yeah, makes sense. I will say, just because you mentioned KMLs or KMZs, you can bring that in with the same button, import layer. You can see all the supported file types here, KML, KMZ, GPX, TIFFs. So there's no special import routine. I mean, really.
Why don't we show them how to kick a KML out? Just pick like the Digipeater layer or something, and then we'll write it out, and then we'll open it in Google Earth.
Sure. So pretty easy. It's just an export routine. So you can just right click and go to export. You can technically use it on selected features. So if I had, here's one. If I had one selected and I go to export, now you have an option to use export only selected features. You can check that. So let's just do that. You would then just change this to KML export format. I will change the layer path. I'll just put it on my desktop for now. Call it Digipeater. Export with attributes, why not? You just click export. There's a readout, says export's finished. It's really fast with one feature. So now if I pull up my desktop, I have my KML here, so I can just double click that and Google Earth launches.
Excellent.
Oh wow, look at that. There's a weather station there.
Yeah, Digipeater. Yeah, we need to cut some trees down around that bad boy.
Put that there.
Yeah, there's shade. Interesting. Cool. So that's convenient. You can also, I think, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the other one they might find useful is GPX if they wanted to load the points onto their GPS. So we've tried to build a lot of options in here that fit our workflows in the field.
So this you would just go to where your GPS is located over here as external data, right? And then you have to pop into the specified folder, and then you would select that folder, and then you can name it whatever you want.
And I think we could cover this as a topic in the future with, you know, we could have people have their GPSs and plug them in, and, you know, we'll go over how to do that so that everybody can do it, and you know, if they have questions, ask questions. But
Sure. There's
we're
this
just doing an
infamous,
overview.
yeah. There's technically a question mark right here. You can right click on that and then it opens up the manual, and this just has more of a brief explanation on how to do it, but you can keep your eye out for those too. It can kind of save some time. Questions. Okay.
Why don't we talk real quick about the update process for the program?
Sure.
Just brief.
Yeah, so under the help menu, there's actually a few things that can be nice. I mean, I always encourage this report issue button because it goes straight to me. So you just fill this out with some data, or if you say like, I can't export my, lines, blah, 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 you have to put your email in. If you hit send on that, it basically comes straight to me and I can get back with you. And, if you have a crash, I work all the time. So I can probably call you up and jump on your computer even to get you fixed up. Release notes, just an ongoing text file. It just shows what we've fixed. I don't really expect a whole lot of beta testing here, but it can be useful. If you do have an issue that I fix, you might check that. We all know that there's the link to the manual. Standardized attributes most likely doesn't apply here. That's more for THP writing. Check for updates. So this is an automated thing. Most of you, if you opened it today or yesterday even, you probably got this pop up as soon as you opened the application, but we're just trying to keep you up to date with the newest build. We're always making updates basically. So here you can do an update process, install update. I'm already up to date. If you did an install and an update and it made the program worse, you can go back a build or two if you want as well.
But it is important to keep up because sometimes, it's the nature of programming. Even though we try to do our best, sometimes we'll accidentally break something. We're working in an area and it's like we might not realize or remember there was a connection, and we're trying to fix something and then we might cause a problem. So the ability to roll back to a previous version if you have trouble, or if we say, oh man, we kind of made a mistake, we're trying to get this thing fixed as quickly as possible, but it lets you go forward and backwards. The main thing though is we want you to stay up to date, because at least for the next foreseeable future, I'd say 2 or 3 years, we're going to probably be making small improvements to the program. Anytime there's an error or a problem, we try to get those right away. But it's good to stay up to date, because otherwise, you might run into an issue.
Yeah, and we make custom tools too, obviously. So if you find that there's something lacking in here and you wish that you had a tool that would find the closest weather station to a stream layer within, a distance of some attribute, we could make a special one-off tool for you that might, if it's something that you're going to do 150 times every month, then we could make a tool that might be able to help you out there. So lastly, just talking about kind of basic tools would be like view distance, which is actually just a button up here. It's this little measure tool. This just gives you the option to measure, or you can change over to area. You could measure an area. Definitely something that gets overlooked from time to time.
Show them Flickr. Not that it's really applicable with a geo that has so many few layers, but sometimes when you just want to see the ortho, maybe there's some feature or something or shading that's blocking it. If you have your orthos on, there's like a light switch button up here.
Just get something on.
Meant to
So
be.
this is called Flickr. You can just see it turns everything off in the layer tree besides the imagery. And it could be nice also, you can right click on it. It gives you this option. So if you just want to see the digipeters, you can press that button and it will turn everything off besides that layer. It's usually sort of a tool to clean up a real confusing geo if you're just trying to do one edit, but it can be pretty useful. Just for editing, You can right click here to turn off any of these toolbars. I usually turn that one off just to have more space.
Oh, you know, one thing you should probably show them around about the layer tree. This tends to get every user is the sorting and then trying to move the layer.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if you click
Hey,
on,
Glenn, do you want to tell the guys what the lines are for, the flight path, so they know?
oh yeah,
On the
so
images?
right, you can see there's kind of these patterns in the image. I'm not really sure. This is the Google image. This could be satellite imagery, or it could be flight paths
like
from a fixed wing aircraft that flew, that they sort of stitched together. And so you just get this kind of, you know, looks like the top of a pie or something, or people laid pieces of ribbon next to each other and they kind of tie them in. You can see how wide they are.
It's pretty wide.
Yeah, so about 3 miles or so across.
Yeah, that's probably one day's work, I would guess, because you can see how bright it is on one side versus the other. So they probably actually, this might be actually like 5 or 6 flight lines, and then they made a composite image, and then they stitch all of them together at the end, which is why you see what you see versus light versus dark throughout the day. But that's kind of guessing. So I don't think they're flying high enough to take a 3 mile wide photo.
No, do we have any of the fire imagery?
Sure.
Maybe let's go to the hog fire. That was a fire from last year, I believe, over on the Almanor district.
This is kind of tricky. This is, you can explain this later maybe. I'm gonna bring in the index file because I don't know where. Do you know where the hog fire is off the top of your head?
Yeah, but it's sort of
812.
yeah,
Go to 812.
weather station 812.
It's
Okay, let's do this.
Susanville.
This is perfect. So we want to actually find something that I don't know where it is because I don't have this memorized. I can use browse, which is
It's
here.
not the fire weather zone, it's a weather station number, right?
Yeah.
Oh, which one?
And
Which
is it a
layer?
permanent or a portable? Is it a permanent weather station?
It's a permanent.
Okay,
Okay,
cool.
so
812.
you sort them.
Go up on that layer.
Sorry, I'm just got selection issues. Okay, cool. 812. So yeah, you can find it with scrolling. You could type it in here for a quick reference. 812. And then if you wanted to zoom to it, there's a few different ways to do it, but you can actually just double click over here, which will zoom in on it. Or you can, if you wanted to make this selection just with this row highlighted, you can zoom to highlighted or select highlighted changes the selection. But
And you'll
that's
see we're
actually,
zoomed in pretty tight. It's like 13 feet per inch. So you would probably want to zoom out to get some context.
right. Oh, I gotta set my settings up. I think I deleted all of them. Look better on their computer.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got the color infrared selected, sorry.
Right.
You flew the same area, right? Planet satellite. So this is just imagery that Glenn had flown.
Last year, after the hog fire.
So do we have to toggle back and forth to see where the is to see where 812 is within there? Is that what you have to do?
No, it's just a hard color right
Yeah,
now. to
make it-
see.
Oh, got it. It's so yeah.
We can just
But that's
make,
good.
Make it
Change
like
your
a
layer.
circle or something.
yeah.
Make it a big circle. Just a normal filled black. There you go. And then bump it up to
if this one's going to be clear enough to actually see it, but
Yeah, it might not be, because these were taken in October, the shadow lengths were pretty long. There isn't any there that we took in
Okay.
2021 because they finished logging it last year.
right. Nice.
Okay, let's see if at this point, if anybody has any questions about what we've covered before. And then if not, or if so, we'll answer them, and then we can move on to how to make an Avenza map and export that out to get onto your tablet or phone. And then we'll leave 15 minutes for people to mess around and then have a 15-minute wrap up.
All right. So I guess we're
So
doing
if
it
you
in the
guys
chat.
have a question, you'll either have to do it in the chat or you'll have to unmute yourself.
The SEID and the feature info, I was confused on that in the training. Yeah, so SEID is generated, there's 2 IDs per layer, really, and I'm not sure why my browser is having issues, but the FID is like the feature ID. This is generated for every single feature always, and it's always unique. So I have this search on, which is kind of confusing. So the FID is not really something that you're going to ever want to use as a value because it's always changing. So like with this FID number 5, if I deleted this feature, this FID would be completely rewritten. So none of these features are going to maintain that data, which is partially why SEID exists. This is made by the program for features that have been edited. So if I edit this, I double clicked on it, I'll just move it up here. I know I'm breaking this data, but what it does is it takes the configure program initials from configure program that you set up, and then it makes a unique number afterwards, which is actually comprised of the date of today and then some random digits. So this will always be unique, and it's kind of a secondary edited date. It kind of helps to just, I don't know, it's just redundant technically because we have created and edited already, but it's more of a querying tool, I guess. It's kind of like a reporting tool. It's really helpful for us at Alpine because we have so many employees working on GIS edits. It's kind of nice to be able to like, oh, it was edited on, 3 months ago by, and we know the initials, we can ask, like, wow, why did you do that or something?
And we've sort of set up your user ID. I mean, we were trying to figure out, well, how do we make something that's unique to the person? I think we did a little bit of an analysis, and we decided that if most people use the first 2 letters of their first name and the first 2 letters of their last name, there won't be a lot of repeats across the company. So in my case, it would be, or in Chris, it would be KRAN.
Yeah,
So
so
in
now if I were
Brian's
to
case,
edit
it would
this,
be BRAD. So you can set that up. And that allows, people to understand, oh, well, that was John Smith that made that, or he edited it then on this date.
right.
So we can tell when stuff gets moved around. We use it in the updating of the GIS as foresters do THPs. We're trying to capture the changes that they make either in the attributes or if they move vertices or move things around or make new roads or build new features. And so we kind of have a bunch of needles in the haystack. And this is kind of how we can tease them out. Because usually when we give a geo back, we will set the created date to a benchmark date. And then we ask the foresters when they turn in their THP geos, when was the approximate date that you began making edits? And we have a way of querying out, based upon the date they specify, the features that they touched and edited, so that we don't have to, merge everything in and like make things different colors and do some visual comparison, somebody going through, laboriously feature by feature or whatever. We can actually sift it out rather quickly.
Cool. How do you undo something? Well, the only time you can really undo an edit is before you actually make a save. So if I'm gonna make a new layer, edit layer, add temp, polygon. Doesn't really apply to points. Well, it does. I guess I can do it with points. But if I add a feature here, it actually shows you right here, edit history. This should update anyway. Tested this thing in a while. Oh, guess not. But you can do Control Z. Oh. Huh. Try some.
Might have to save it.
Yeah. Oh, there it goes. Doesn't work on new features. So if you make all these edits, you can undo those with Control Z. This is just for reference. You don't have to have this open. But technically, if you're adding a polygon, you can undo changes with Control Z.
Let's say you actually deleted it.
Yeah, so if you delete this feature, edit geographic delete, and you didn't mean to, you can do edit geographic delete undo, and it will come back. And that applies for deleting a layer too. If you can right click here and do remove selected layers. Okay, and then you did that on accident, you can do edit layer delete undo, and it will come back. But the way that Atlas works, there's no edit mode necessarily. You don't just go into edit mode on a layer and then do a bunch of work for like an hour to where you can just kind of keep track of all that. As soon as we're done editing a feature and you hit enter, that's it. You're kind of locked in with that. Yeah, the shapefile has been completely resaved at that point.
Show them if they accidentally sorted their layers. Show them how they can find things.
Well, there's two things with the layer tree that can catch you. Well, really, there's only one thing that's going to catch you off guard, but this is important for setting up your map initially is draw priority. So depending on where this layer is in the layer tree, and they probably actually learned this already, but if this is on the bottom, it's going to be on the bottom if the layers are stacked here. So temp, I guess I can technically put it down here below this imagery now because we have that hard coded. We always want the imagery below. Let me put this sec. I do. Oh, did the wrong thing. So if I have, of course I did red, so this isn't going to show up anyway. One sec. Oh, you can kind of see it. Must have red. Okay, so now we have two layers that are on top of each other. If I move this temp, sorry, if I move this temp above there, now that dot is below. So that's important to know. And I just explained that because you can technically sort in the layer tree. So if you click on this, now you're sorting alphabetically, but you can't move anymore because you're sorting on alphabetically. Now the draw priority function is disabled essentially. So it could be useful if you're just trying to find something and you want to quickly find A because you know it's at the top of the list, you could do that, but it can kind of get confusing. So to undo that, you come in here, which is just a right click on any of this header information and clear sorting. And so now you're back to.
You can drag and drop the layers again.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
You can search for layers as well in the search bar there.
Sure.
And it'll highlight the ones that it finds.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Okay.
All right.
Why don't we branch into how to make an Avenza PDF map?
All right, sounds good. What would be a typical, I guess I can just pick a weather station. Is there an example that you want to specifically go over occasionally?
They might want to do a couple of weather stations in an area because they try to.
Yeah, that was one question I wanted to ask. So since we've started, working here, we went from districts now to areas. So if we wanted to do an Avenza layer for the, Mike Mitchell's area, we could add that in the field and we could select by that, right?
Yeah, do we have an area
I don't know if we do.
layer, Chris?
I don't know if I have one. Let me check. I don't think I do. Management area?
We can make one that's just combining the districts.
I have ownership.
That can, bring in districts. That's a good one.
Actually, we can show thematics on district as kind of a nice reference too. So, we might have all learned this already, but I'll kind of just go through it. But with district especially, it's like you want to just see those districts broken out. So instead of just setting one setting for your entire layer, you can come in here and set by unique values. So you're using the fields from the attribute table. So I'm selecting the district field, and then you come over here to fill unique values. And so now I have all of the different districts in different colors, which can be useful. And these are just kind of to randomize the colors, or you can, not really necessary. And then obviously we could set let's just leave it on all the time. You can actually type in here if you know the name. You don't have to go through the effort of, you can just start typing it, click OK. So we have those, they're hard to read. So I would just come in here. Halo is usually nice. A white halo would be better. Yeah. So now we can see where we're going.
Yeah, so let's just say they want to do something on the Tahoe district, and they want to make a map that sort of shows the whole Tahoe district. How would they do that?
Okay. I was just thinking another tool that might be interesting is some of the, well, they would have gone through those too, but select geographic touching, select geographic within a distance. These sorts of things are really interesting too. It could apply to Tahoe district. You could do select geographic within a distance, so SGW, and you could select all of the permanent weather stations within, 5280, so a mile of that district. Looks like there's only 2. But quickly, you'd be able to just kind of grab those. Okay, so I guess what
I have a quick question. So one of the things, Chris, that we deal with is, as we've bought different ownerships, making sure we have that. So if we go on and we were to bring in a district layer, are those updates made? So like on the Tahoe district, Soper Ground went in there. I think you have it on there because of the 1 dot. So, so are those made, Glenn, after we made more purchases? Did you just go in automatically and update that layer?
Usually what happens is if the people have GIS, we get their GIS layers and we kind of go through it because we're not really sure if it matches up with ours, but we try to build, the ownership layer of the new purchases in as quickly as possible. I'm not sure, of the date of Chris's. I think there's a little bit more. I mean, I'd have to pan up so we can see Feather Falls a little bit better, Chris. Yeah, I don't know that Soper's completely in here because it would be along the southeastern edge.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't worked.
So
here we go.
There's a different layer.
Sorry, this district's out of date, obviously. Let's do this.
Yeah, Chris, so that would be something that, would trip us up is, we had body property and now we've kind of been purchasing more things. And, I'm asked to do an analysis for a potential weather station or water quality sites. And so, if we contact you, we just want to make sure we have the most recent layer.
I know Alpine updates them pretty darn quick and then turns them back over. So I think that would be pretty easy for her to just call you, Glenn, right? And just grab the newest data. Yeah. But what you could do if you wanted to, It just depends on how accurate you want to kind of maintain all this data, but technically if there's new pieces, you, yeah, it might not be worth getting into. You probably just
No,
gonna,
it's all right, but
yeah.
show them how to get rid of the lines, because sometimes those aren't always productive.
Oh yeah, just the outline.
The parcel layer, it actually is down to the assessor's parcel layer. So you would have to just go in here and turn off the border.
Yeah, I would just make the border color transparent. I don't know if we have I don't think we have a pre-built.
Do it
Yeah,
to
we don't
all.
have yeah, so you're gonna have to do all of them. That one, let's not bore everybody. But you can see what it looks like without, so. You can do it for Tahoe.
Yeah.
I guess you can come in here too and just do no border.
Yeah.
Under the border style, no border.
Right.
Okay, cool. So
Tahoe again.
So here's Tahoe. Oh, I don't have these all merged. So now I have a bunch of features for Tahoe. So to select all of those, I'll go back into EAB. This is just a bug with new geos. It's not really. I'm gonna just use this filter tooltip.
Okay.
Which is nice because for Tahoe, I have 597 features. So now that I made that filter, you can see here the FID is always unique, as I mentioned before. This is a summary bar down here, so it's always just telling you how many unique attributes you have. So you can see these are all Tahoe. There's only one unique attribute in here, but for FID, there's 597. So that's just a feel good for me. So if I click this, select filter, that's just meaning that I want to actually make that my selection. So now, as we've all learned, this geographic selection count down here is now 597 because it's showing what I have selected there. So I'm gonna actually union these because I don't want to do that again. And well, do we care about any of the attribute information in there for printing?
Probably not for parcels, but we'll get them something that's not as high.
Well, I'll just copy this to a new layer for now. I'll just call this Tahoe, edit geographic copy. Okay, so now I can turn off my parcel. I just have a Tahoe. I'm gonna Control A. There's a kind of redundant way to do that. You don't have to do select layer all. Yeah, edit geographic union, Tahoe. So now I'm gonna put all 597 of those features into one feature. This just pops up to tell you the attribute information of the resulting feature. For now, we don't care, but you could change it. So now I just have one feature. It's just easier to work with at the moment. View map chosen. So now if I have a selection, I can do view map chosen, kind of centers the map. So are we good to make a map here?
Yeah, let's make
Okay, so we want to make a map. We probably want to be able to see what's on the ground. So we probably need to set up some labels, I would assume. Right now we have these huge SPI perm stations, which I think is probably going to be too big. I'm going to knock these back down to a 10, size 10. Just fine.
There's a little bit of trial and error when you go to make your events map. You know, you can export it. Oh, that looks good, or oh no, man, that's way too big, or those things are so big they're covering up my stuff. You'll have to make it to your own taste.
Is a station a good attribute to use
for
labeling? Okay.
Just need to fix the labels so they're not covering up the point.
So I'll just go top right can be good. That got broken somehow. This used to be default to white. And that's a little bit more clear. Okay, so let's label these two. So this is just map composition. Stations are labeled, position, top center. Let's just do the same thing with top right. Style, halo. Okay, so now we have everything just about labeled. Do
Those
we want to,
repeaters.
oh, the repeaters. Is this the same field
Should be.
station? Should have shown them the trick for this. I could have saved the settings and just applied it to all of these. So these are on. Okay, so now everything is labeled. This is labeled. Labeled? Oh yeah, 269. Is that the
I
right
think I would
label?
make the, if I was doing this map, I would probably make the fire weather zone labels different. Maybe make them red, maybe italicize them just so they, and maybe make the font a little bigger just so they stand out from the weather station labels.
Color or just the size?
The color. And then I would italicize them, maybe bold them. Put a halo around them.
on there. I don't know what halo should be default. Okay, so let's see what that actually looks like. I keep on just selecting this in view map chosen because I'm trying to center it up in the map before I go to print it. So I guess we'll just pretend that that looks good and go to file. Oh, I just need to restart this because new geos are kind of like that. There's a couple little bugs with them. So I'm just going to load that geo back up. So file geo, it's in this list right here. So you can just click on that, or you can do the keystrokes file geo 1. Okay, so now we're just going to go file print. And the first thing that actually happens here is that it loads your default print layout template. And this is sort of a mock THP template, which may not be useful to you. So if you're going to be mostly doing one thing, let's just say you're going to be mostly doing events and maps, let's just start a new map. So I'm going to do new. I don't want to save. And everything in here is just kind of driven based off of different print layout elements is what we call them. So these are all elements. And the first thing that you probably want is a map. So I'm going to add that as an element. Now we can see the map.
How do we zoom to the district in here?
Zooming to the district, oh, to line that up.
Yeah.
So now that you have the map selected, you can technically stay in here and move around. So I'm just going to zoom out. So I'm just clicking on that to zoom. That's actually all fitting right there, isn't it?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And you can pan, if you wanted to pan to line it up a little bit better, you can do that. Or let me see if I can actually show this. If I'm, so here's my map, my main mapping window. You can pan here and it will also pan on this. So if you have two monitors, you might just put this off to the other screen and just use the main mapping window to do that. But sometimes it's nice to just stay in the print layout window. Okay. Okay, so we've got 267. Some of our labels are in there. I guess we don't really know what's going on because we don't have a legend. So let's add a legend.
Hey, Brian just asked a question. Can
Oh, I
you
see.
review how to select all the fire weather zone labels and change their font? Did you
Okay.
just right click on it?
So we want to change select the fire weather zone
69,
labels.
yeah.
So this guy. So technically there's a drop down menu commands for this, which would be display layer settings. but the easiest way to do it is just double click on this. So now you've opened your layer settings. You have layer style settings, label settings. So we're only interested.
Layers are on the left. The layer style settings are always on the left, and the labels are always on the right.
Right. And we want to select all the, so select all of the fire weather zone labels. Okay, so select all is a little bit confusing for me just because the terminology would be select all for the shapes. You don't have to select anything to do label settings, just to clear that up if it's confusing.
Hang on just a second. So
Okay.
is the question, how do I select all the things, or how do I adjust the label to make it look different?
He just wants to change the font. So here's the font right here. Oh, select. You want to select the labels? Like move an individual label?
Brian, you want to
Just
unmute yourself?
tell us what you want.
And can you hear me right now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I just want to know how to select like all the weather station labels. All you do is double click on the layer tree and it will bring up your layer box right there. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks. That's simple.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. I mean, we could do an advanced thing right now just for fun since we're kind of talking about that label in particular. But if, for instance, in print layout, oh, everything's moving because I'm moving the main map. Let me just leave this big so it's less confusing. Okay. So okay, so let's say, zoom this back out. Okay, so let's say we don't like the placement of 269 in particular, because that's kind of where we're working or something. If we just want to move 269 label, you can select that feature that owns that label,
Which is
and you
that
can
zone.
just, for that zone, yeah, and you can move it. So I'm just using this toolbar option right here. It just tells you how to do it. Left mouse button to start operation, hold and move for changes. So basically you can click anywhere really. It kind of feels more natural to come down next to it. But once I click, now I'm grabbing it. So you can just grab and drag and drop. And then you have to hit enter to save, just like any other changes that you make. So it can be nice, especially for map composition, if you wanted to get everything kind of up in the middle of the screen more. And you don't want to move every single, because the main thing to remember here is if you adjust the position or the style, anything that you do in label settings applies to the entire layer. So that's good to know. Okay, cool. So now we have
a quick question too.
Okay.
Where 903, 879, and 811 are, they're kind of on top of each other since they're so close. Yeah, right there. So how would you get 879 to show fully?
879. Is that a, let's see.
It's one.
So,
it's a digipeater. One of them's a digipeater.
I guess because there's only one conflicting, I would probably just select that one and move the label out of the way. But you can't really see anything in there at the moment, can you?
Move 811.
Move this one up a little bit higher.
Down. Because I think 811, the label is covering up the symbol for 879.
Right. Actually, what's good to do sometimes too, like right now, since we're in map composition, is to bookmark this spot because you want to come back here potentially. There's my bookmark bar, it's hidden. Sec. Press this plus just print. I just as like a feel good if I want to go back to where I was, because I know that's where I'm setting up all these labels so it looks good at that place. Now if you want to go back to it, you can just kind of move back in that area. So we have this one, 811. Let's move that just here. Bring this one down. Oh, I moved that one. Okay, enter. And trying to keep with the kind of keeping it up to the top right. I guess this would be functional right there, but just put that on top of there. Okay, now let's go back to the map. That's more
It's a little
usable.
better.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard if the symbols are too close together because
Right,
there's only so much you can do at the it's scale dependent.
Right, this is a pretty big scale. So.
Let's mask out the stuff behind the legend so that we don't see those lines.
Okay, so I have the legend layout selected. We come down here to symbol, background, hit the ellipses to change the symbol background. Probably just call this white background. There we go. Or I can change it to a more obvious color just so it looks like something happened. Okay. And you can put an outline on there too if you want to dress it up. I'm gonna change this back to white because gray looks funny. Okay. Cool, so now we have a legend. It's kind of big. This is a little nuanced here, but to change the size, really what's the problem right now is that the text is too big, so you actually want to change the size of the font. I'm gonna bring that down to, I don't know, maybe 9. And most everything that you're gonna want to do, everything that you click on in the print layout, any of these layout elements, all the settings are right here. So some of it's going to be a little bit of trial and error to just kind of see what something does. But with the label, I mean, with the legend, you have a ton of options. Display map groups, not really applicable at the moment. Thematics we talked about, we don't have any layers with thematic set right now, but you can choose to show a label for those or not. So it would say like roads, and then under roads would be like 5 different types like of symbols for the road. Draw on one line, I'm going to set to true so you can see what that does. Makes it a lot more compact. But it's not showing the full layer name now, so that would be wrap text. I'm going to just double click that to set that to true. Now you can see it's going down to the next line, which I'm not sure I really like, but I guess.
Let's pop back real quick to the place where we can change how it shows in the legend as far as the name of it. So let's just call it permanent portables digipeater.
Oh,
so
okay.
if we go back to the, I don't know, editing window or whatever, if you double click this, see how there's legend text? So just call that portable.
Something like that.
Yeah, good enough.
Here's port stations, so we can clean up that legend. Since right now it uses by default the name of the layer, and these have pretty long names, so we can just bring those down. How to remove legend. Okay. The layout element itself, if you wanted to remove that, it's just this X button. I don't really want to do it though, because I just got it all set up. But you could add another
Do you
one.
have a default copyright thing in there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See the north button. Is it in the legend? We just don't see it.
No.
Nope, it's just another button here. So it's this text with copyright.
Text with copyright. Okay.
It just pops
right,
it up
good.
here. And it's kind of the same deal. You're going to want to set the background to have some sort of color to it. There we go. And oops, not that. We can put a scale. I actually
Brian wants to know how to remove the legend. So if you don't want a legend, you don't have to put one in.
Right. Yeah, I just kind of.
Or let's say you chop it up real good, you just want to get rid of it and start over.
Right. I think you can actually just hit delete on it with the delete key, but you can, if you have it selected here in the layout, just click the X button.
Okay.
To remove it. Yep. Insert special scale bar. This is special because it's always an inch on the piece of paper. So it doesn't matter how wide you make this. When you print this or when you send it to a PDF, when you put your finger up to this, or if you wanted to measure this, actually, this is kind of a cool thing that nobody really cares about but me, but we've spent a lot of time to make, if you zoom to 100%, this is a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So if you measured this right now, it would actually be 8.5 by 11, and this legend would actually be 1 inch if you put a tape measure up to your screen, which is just nice because there's
A lot of other
DPIs.
programs don't do this.
Yeah, not a lot of other ones. They use like a 96 DPI as default, which your computer screen probably isn't. So it's a little bit.
Some of the other things, like I think you could add a picture or a bitmap or whatever. We won't necessarily get into that, but you can explore around with the different buttons up there. You know, you can put a north arrow in.
Right. If you wanted this to be perfect square, you could come in here to the width and height and just set this to like 12 and oops, sorry, 12. Negative square. Okay, so let's get into, let's see here. So we talked about if you want to move around and pan the distance. Sorry, I'm just reading one of these questions here. That distance legend will adjust depending on the scale of the map. The special, yes. So if you, I think I see your question. So if you want to change, this is based 40,492. That's the current scale set here that you can see. So that automatically fills in with whatever the actual zoom level is. And you can actually change that in here if you select the map and you didn't like that number the way that it is, you can go here and just change that manually. So we're at 40,000, maybe you just do 41,000. So now you have a cleaner looking scale, or I guess 40,000 would probably be cleanest. Does that answer the question, Casey? Got it, thank you. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's important because that does look so dumb if it's not set right. Okay, cool.
Moving on how to print to a PDF
Yeah, how
or
to print
save
to
as
PDF.
an appendix.
Oh, before we get there, so sorry. Now that we set this up and we have, let's just say this is like a template. Now that we like this, we're going to use this in the future. You can hit the Save Default Template button because right now the default template is basically set up for a THP document map. So I would just click this. It's going to say, do you want to override the default? You can hit yes. That way now if I close and I go back to File Print, it'll open up with that as your default. Now it's not scale dependent though. So if I zoom in here, it's just a template. It's not a document. So if I go to print when I'm zoomed in, it's all affecting these layout elements. Those are all still the same, but we changed the zoom level. So we've kind of, it could be useful though still, because if you're going to just make a bunch of events and maps and you know this works as your events and map template, then you can just use that, zoom to a different area. You could even use this bookmarks if you wanted to print 3 or 4 of them. You could kind of do a quick and dirty way of doing it would be, you want to make a map here and you want to make a map here. You could add another template. So this would be like print 2 and then file print. Now you're in this area. And you could print that. So that's kind of the concept with the template. There is technically a way to make it more of a document.
Yeah, show them that.
Okay. Okay, so that's the template, which I just showed. Really the thing that it does is just save all of these layout elements. But if you wanted to save, now you can save a different template, but we just overrode the default, which is just what opens by default. But if you wanted to do, say you wanted to do paper size, like a tabloid or something, or what do I have, 10 by 14. Let me go to, oh, that is print to PDF. Adobe PDF, let me see if I have a bigger, 11 by 17, okay. Just gonna hit this button that says fit to screen. It's kind of the quick way to get there. So now you can have 11 by 17 if maybe that's a better way for you to make Avenza maps. So I'm gonna adjust everything here to fit that. And so let's save this as a new template. So that's layout document. This is the template. So I'm just gonna call this 11 by 17 PDF research and monitoring.
Your 11 is 10.
Oh, that's okay. Sorry. Okay, so now when I open, this is still gonna open to, I think everybody probably knows where I'm going with this, but our default is the same, but if you wanted to open that template because you wanna make an 11 by 17, you would just go here. I'm gonna zoom again to get that whole screen. So now you're back to that template. So lastly, sorry, this is a lot of information here, but if you want to save a template which is also maintains everything that you see here, all of the style settings, label settings, zoom, this extent, you can save a document. So that's, sorry, oh yeah, that was right. Save print layout document.
This is probably what you're going to do most of the time.
And this, yeah. So if you want to come back and print this later, we can just, you can come up with a naming convention that makes sense.
Something.
I don't know, this is pink, so I'll change the color and we can show how this works. Okay, so there's our pink one. I'll change the, oh, no, I'll change Tahoe. Change this to, I guess. Okay, so now I've changed that to orange. I come in here, this looks like orange. You open this up, the template, you're kind of close, but you remembered that you had a specific document that you wanted. So let's load that document. I don't want to save. So now I'm going to load the pink one. Let's click open. And now you can see that it reverted those colors back, that extent. So that's the important thing there is once you get that saved, you have free reign to come back in here, change everything you want, change the extent, change all the symbols. It doesn't matter. 2 weeks later, you can come back in here and load that document.
Go ahead and get all the way out and just show them how even without a geo loaded, you can do file, print.
Sure.
And load that document again and it'll pull it right up. So we've gotten completely out of the program. We're coming in. We don't have a geo loaded at all, but we want to go to that document we just saved. If you go file, print document, it's going to bring up your print documents. You can say open. It's going to take you back to the thing you saved.
So it loads the geo, essentially. It loads the geo and all those settings without having to go through all the steps, zooming around and things. So you can just go straight into printing.
Okay,
so we're running low on time. Let's do the PDF or Avenza. Okay, so here's our Avenza map. There's a button, export for Avenza. Most of these settings aren't going to apply all too much. Orientation is kind of important. Paper size is going to be adjusted the way that we do export for Avenza. We kind of are going for the highest resolution possible. So output path, let's just save this to the desktop. and there's a whole explanation over here if we forget it. But right now it's saying the base scale, and okay, so what is base scale? Right now we've zoomed all the way out to 40,000 feet, and what this is saying here is that the best resolution that we can get you is going to be what the map would look like if you zoomed in to 4,780 feet. So it's kind of a multi-step thing here, but once you get the hang of it, it's really not too much work. But what you would do, or what I would do, is set it up the way that you want, just like we did, and press that export for Avenza button. Now we know 4780. Okay. So now I'm gonna zoom into 4780, hit enter. And let's pan to, okay, so there's a label. So this is basically what it's gonna look like on the iPad or whatever you're using in your hand. With this sort of data, there's really not much to talk about. It looks perfectly fine. So there's really no settings to change. But when you have hundreds of labels, and you have overlap, this is where you would want to set it, because let's go back up to this area. So here's 4780. So now when we look at this, these labels don't really make a whole lot of sense, because if you are on your iPad and you zoomed in pretty far, the labels are not going to really be in the correct position. So you might actually move these back. You can just hit this reset label button. I wonder if we'll be able to actually, I can try to show what this actually will look like. So let me speed through this real quick. Oh, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to reset those all so they look like that. This will kind of paint a clearer picture. Go back to that print area. Doesn't, okay. So now we have that set. Everything looks right at that zoom level. Set the path, desktop, let's just call it 1. And I'm just gonna hit export without changing anything.
This is a relatively lightweight map because, you know, we just have the fire weather zones and some points. But your base scale, in a way, controls the final size of the map that gets produced.
Right,
Go
so
ahead and let's open the map that we made.
okay.
Now it looks
So
really faint.
it looks like this because with that base scale, we're expecting to look at this at the far zoomed in 75. This is so hard to navigate, sorry. 7. Okay, so zoomed in 75%. It looks good when you're zoomed in. So let me just go like this now. I'm gonna set to current, which is that 40,000 feet. And let's export it again, much faster because it's got a little less data to work through. So now, I guess the easy way to say this is if you set the export to Avenza to current, it's like the what you see is what you get button. It's going to print exactly like, see how these labels are overlapping. But if I viewed this one, how did I override it? Shoot.
Yeah.
Well, if I
Do a
didn't
different
override it,
scale. Just make a 2 map and just type manually like 20, or not 20, but 20,000.
okay. So that one's still usable, but if I zoomed here to 20,000, such an abstract concept to describe. So I hope
Did you open 2?
did, but I don't know where.
I think you did.
Okay, so here's 2. You can see everything's a bit smaller. Unfortunately, I can't type in zoom to 20,000 here, but I think you can see the point is when you
You can
zoom
do a
in.
right click and do marquee zoom.
I know, where is it? I don't know.
Oh, what?
I'm
What
in
program is this?
Google.
Oh,
Anyway, I think it does actually illustrate the point because you can see how these labels are not as bunched up as they were. This is the 40,000 foot map. So they're stacked on top of each other there. With the 20,000 foot map, they're not as nearly as stacked. So I guess the takeaway, since we're running out of time, really is that we've over-engineered it because we want to have the capability to print a really high resolution, like really detailed map, meaning you would be able to make a huge map like this that you anticipate using in the field by zooming in really far. And
zoom out
so,
a little bit
mhm.
and turn on an ortho. And let's just send out an ortho photo.
Oh yeah. As those maybe I can turn on the Google, be lighter weight. That's probably like 5 gigabytes worth of imagery. Oh, I've got the different scale issue. 1 sec, let me just zoom in here. It's only loading this portion because this is what we're zoomed to. So let me just zoom back to that original size. Okay.
So now export 1, just call it like ortho or something. You can kind of game this and control it a little bit. You know, if you wanted to, if you were going to a place where there was like, say 5 or 6 weather stations, you were kind of go service a bunch of them. You could sort of, for your day map, just zoom in so that those were the only ones that you saw. And then when you export it at that higher resolution, you would really be able to see a lot of detail. But like if you were looking at a couple of districts, you wouldn't want to necessarily export at the maximum amount of detail because, you know, one, you're going to end up with a file that's really, really huge. Go ahead and zoom in.
I think I have the drop priority wrong in the layer tree. It's interesting actually.
Just zoom in and see what we can see.
I don't think, oh, it is on top, okay. I mean, this is pushing the limits of what we're capable of doing with the PDF because it's just about as big of a map as you can make. But do you typically build maps on this scale that you need to use high resolution imagery in the field?
We could. I think the key is if you needed to see the detail in the ortho, you would zoom into the area that you were, you know, interested in working for the day. And then when you exported it, you're going to have the ortho be a resolution that's useful to you.
Right. Might be higher resolution if we're not working with Google satellite imagery because it's got pyramids. So
Yeah,
when we
try a
do that,
different layered. Maybe try the 2018 or something.
well, I guess these all have pyramids actually.
Your Google is on top of your other.
Yeah, it's going, waiting for this loading bar here. Okay.
Let's zoom in a little more. You know, zoom in so you can see 5 or 6 weather stations.
Okay, just let it think here for a second. I think I'll just open this up again.
Yeah, that's good. Let's try that.
So if you want it to be really detailed, you would actually want to use this maximum zoom 541,
Yep.
not the current. So this is going to be really massive though.
Just go ahead and export it. Call it like Ortho 2 or something.
Let's just do 1,000.
The bigger the map, the longer it'll take to export. We'll look
Right.
at file sizes too real quick when we get out of here, but
Right. You can see the orthos 42 megabytes, whereas the other ones were not even 1 megabyte. It's the weather station. Not sure if that's usable resolution or not, but it's definitely higher.
yeah. Okay, well, we didn't really leave any time for you guys to mess around with it, but if you have questions, we can answer those now. And then if you have questions that pop up, you can always get back to us and we can answer.
Does anybody have any questions on the crew?
Anybody?
Yeah, we can hear.
Not at the moment.
Okay, well, maybe what we should do is we'll try to get some layers for the fire weather stations and work on that, see if we can, change labels and, start off with something very practical that we would do, Glenn.
Yeah.
And then, Chris, we can look at those and set up another training to maybe go over issues we had trying to do that, if we had any.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, these sorts of things are almost better if you just poke around and get lost and then come in kind of with the questions. That way we can, I don't know how much of this was even helpful because it was sort of an overview. So I think the next training session might be a little bit more fruitful.
Okay. All right. Well, we really appreciate your time, and we'll be back in touch with you. Glenn, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I think this was a good, introduction, and I'm going to